Imagine a world without banks, no loans, no credit, every transaction done in clunky physical coin. That was Europe in the 13th century. Money was stagnant, trapped. Then, one family from Florence changed everything. They didn't just become rich, they rewrote the rules of wealth itself. They realized that the real power wasn't in hoarding gold, it was in moving it. To understand the Medici, you have to understand the law they were up against. In the 14th century, the Catholic Church held a monopoly on the soul, and they had one strict rule for the wallet. Usury is a mortal sin. Lending money at interest wasn't just a crime, it was an express ticket to hell. This meant capital was frozen. The economy was a stagnant pond. But in 1397, a man named Giovanni di Bicci de' Medici saw a glitch in the theology. He realized the church didn't hate profit, they hated interest. So he invented a workaround that would make him the richest man in Italy without ever breaking a single commandment. He called it the letter of exchange. Instead of lending you 1,000 florins and charging you 10% interest, Giovanni would sell you a service. You give him florins in Florence, and he gives you a piece of paper. You take that paper to his branch in London, and they pay you out in English pounds. The glitch? He manipulated the exchange rate. The interest was hidden inside the currency conversion. To the Pope, it looked like a simple merchant service. To Giovanni, it was a high-velocity money machine that bypassed the laws of God and man. By the time the church realized what was happening, the Medici weren't just bankers. They were the bankers to the church. If Giovanni was the one who found the glitch, his son Cosimo was the one who built the empire. Cosimo de' Medici understood a truth that most billionaires today still haven't figured out. Visibility is a vulnerability. While the other noble families in Florence wore silk and gold to scream their status, Cosimo rode a mule. He dressed like a simple merchant. He lived by the motto, be rather than seem. But behind the humble facade, he was building the world's first modern holding company. He didn't just have one bank, he had a franchise. Branches in London, Bruges, Geneva, and Milan. But here was the genius. Each branch was a separate legal entity. If the London branch made a bad loan to a king and went bankrupt, the rest of the Medici Empire stayed safe. It was the original too big to fail. But Cosimo's real masterpiece wasn't financial, it was political. He realized that you don't need to hold office to rule a city. You just need to hold the debt of the men who do. By quietly paying the taxes of his allies and buying the loyalty of the poor through massive public works, Cosimo became the shadow king of Florence. He funded the completion of the Great Dome. He commissioned Donatello's David. He wasn't just buying art, he was buying legitimacy. He turned the city of Florence into a physical manifestation of his bank's balance sheet. By the time his enemies realized he owned the city, it was already too late. They tried to exile him, but the economy of Florence was so dependent on Medici credit that the city literally began to collapse without him. Within a year, they begged him to return. Cosimo didn't just return as a banker. He returned as Pater Patriae, the father of the country. He had successfully turned private wealth into public destiny. Cosimo built the engine, but his grandson Lorenzo was the one who redlined it. They called him Il Magnifico, the Magnificent, and under his rule, Florence became the center of the universe. Lorenzo understood a new kind of leverage, cultural hegemony. He realized that if you control the art, the philosophy, and the science of an era, you control its soul. He didn't just hire artists, he adopted them. He took a teenage boy named Michelangelo into his own home and raised him alongside his own children. He funded Botticelli, Da Vinci, and Galileo. This wasn't charity, it was the most expensive public relations campaign in human history. Every time someone looked at the birth of Venus or marveled at the dome of the cathedral, they were subconsciously bowing to Medici power. Lorenzo used beauty to distract the public from the fact that a single family of unelected bankers was running their republic. He became the needle on the scales of Italian politics. Through bribes, diplomacy, and strategic marriages, he kept the warring states of Italy in a delicate balance. Peace was good for business, and Lorenzo was the guarantor of that peace. For a brief shining moment, the Medici Bank was the undisputed master of the known world. They had transmuted cold, hard gold into immortal legacy. But beneath the gold leaf and the marble statues, the foundation was beginning to crack. Lorenzo was a genius diplomat, but a terrible banker. He was spending capital faster than the branches could generate it. He ignored the ledgers to focus on poetry and politics. The Golden Age was built on a mountain of hidden debt, and the bill was about to come due. In 1494, the mountain of debt finally collapsed. The Medici Bank, once the financial heart of Europe, shuttered its doors. The people of Florence, fueled by a radical monk named Savonarola, turned on the family. They looted the palazzo, they smashed the statues. The Medici were chased out of the city they had bought and built. To any other family, this would have been the end. But the Medici had spent 3 generations building something more durable than gold: institutional infiltration. They realized that banks can fail, but empires and religions are too big to fail. They pivoted from the counting house to the cathedral. Lorenzo's son, Giovanni, became Pope Leo X. Suddenly, the family that used to pay taxes to the church was now the one collecting them from every corner of the earth. They used the papacy to reclaim Florence, not as bankers, but as hereditary dukes. They didn't stop at the Vatican. They married into the bloodlines of Europe's greatest kings. They produced 2 queens of France, Catherine and Marie de Medici. The wool merchants from Florence were now the ones deciding the fate of nations, commanding armies, and shaping the map of the world. The bank was dead, but the Medici Code survived. They proved that if you invest your wealth into high-leverage assets, education, art, and strategic alliances, you create a legacy that can survive a market crash, a revolution, or the passing of centuries. The Medici didn't just make a million, they made history. And that is the ultimate goal of the architect. Au come Dieu. Thank you for listening. This is the Cardinal Ledger.